Community and Economic Development Committee. My name is Herb Wesson. I am the chair. At this point in time, I'm the only member that's here, but we will proceed with the business of this committee. We'll just, any and every action taken will be deemed to communicate from the chair, and in the event that we, and hopefully we'll have a quorum before the committee is over. So at this point in time, we have no cards from the public. Do you guys have anything you want to say? Do you want to be a filler, Neil? I mean, just kind of, you're an attorney. You should be able to talk for 4 or 5 hours without taking a breath.
Yeah, I'm stating
you're stammering. Yeah, oh, he's not a trial lawyer. That's what Andrew said. He's not a trial lawyer. All right, since you are not a trial lawyer, what we will do, Anne Marie, why don't we read item number 1?
Item number 1, CRA report relative to the CRA fiscal year 2010-11 quarterly financial status report for the period ending December 31st, 2010.
Okay, we'll receive and file the CRA report on that item. We've just been joined by my dear friend and wingman, Councilmember Ed Reyes. Could you read item 2?
Item 2, CRA and CLA reports relative to contracts for as-needed concrete and asphalt public improvement services. Contracts are with K&H Construction, Inc. and Excel Paving Company and are in a total aggregate amount not to exceed $6 million for a 1-year term with options to renew 2 additional 1-year periods.
Okay, on that item, we'll adopt the CLA report. That brings us to item 3.
CRA and CAO reports relative to contracts with 6 firms to provide as-needed traffic engineering services. Contracts are with KOA Corporation, URS, Fair and Piers, ITERIS, FPL and Associates, and Linscott Law and Greenspan, and are in an aggregate amount are not to exceed $1.5 million for a 3-year term with options to renew for 2 additional 1-year periods.
Okay, on item 3, we'll adopt the CAO report. That brings us to item 4.
CRA and CLA reports relative to authority to enter into contracts for as-needed demolition, environmental remediation, and asbestos lead abatement services.
Okay, then we'll adopt the CLA report on that item. Item 6.
Item 6. CDD and CRA reports and joint resolution and CAO to report relative to adoption of findings and authority to execute a contract with and provide up to $20,000 to the Hollywood Beautification Team to construct a city-owned bioswale that is part of the off-site improvements in connection with the development of the HBT headquarter facility.
Okay. On that item, we'll adopt the CAO report. All of the actions that we just took will be deemed to communicate from the chair. Anne Marie,
Yes.
should the Lakers trade Andrew Bynum for Carmelo Anthony?
I don't know.
Mr. City Attorney, make yourself useful.
no.
You want to weigh in on this?
Oh, you go, Sharon.
I'm sorry, but yes.
They should. Okay. All right. With that said, now that we've,
And what do you think?
we did. I'm just killing time.
I know, as am I, and asking you.
I'm trying to get a quorum here. I don't think so. No, I really don't think so. I hate to admit it, but big wins basketball games. Tall wins basketball games. Okay, now
Here?
this what?
That's why you're here?
That's why I'm here.
Okay.
That's why I'm here. Now that brings us to item Mr. Reyes.
I'm just enjoying the moment.
Item 5. Ms.
Item
Fowler.
5.
Yes.
In council today, CDD and CAO reports relative to the 2011 Community Services Block Grant Award and related actions. On February 1st, 2011, Arts, Parks, Health, and Aging Committee waived consideration of the above matter.
Don't everybody just rush up here.
We're going to time for him.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Trade him or not?
Bynum's the big guy. We need him in the middle.
So you're saying don't trade him?
I say don't trade. It's the future.
I agree. If he says so, I say.
Okay.
Manny Chavez with the Community Development Department. What you have before you is the department's request for authority to accept the Community Services Block Grant for program year 2011. The funding is actually on the calendar year cycle from January through December. What you have before you is a request to accept the first quarter of those dollars, and typically the balance of the funding comes in a couple months down the line. The $7.5 million award primarily supports our family source system. All of the CSBG funds that we receive for program go directly to family source, and of course that's augmented with the CDBG grant for a total of $18 million. So again, the CSBG represents about a third of the total award that supports the family source centers. Of great concern to us is word from Washington, specifically from the President himself in the State of the Union address, that CSBG is looking to be reduced. And the recent word is that it's proposed for a 50% reduction for 2012. So we're hoping that that doesn't impact 2011 unless there are some rescissions to the grant. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. The National Community Action Foundation is the primary advocacy group supporting CSBG, so they're in conversations with Washington as we speak. The impact of no funding for 2012 would arrive January 1, 2012, and of course, because we fund the Family Source Centers on the CSB or the CDBG program year, that would impact the last quarter of the Family Source funding for this forthcoming year. So it is of great concern to us, and we're going to be tracking that as we go along.
Now, let me jump in, if I may. 50% is what you're suggesting, not you're suggesting, is what you're hearing that they'd want to reduce the funding that we receive.
That's correct.
Now, have we talked to our lobbyists? Do they believe that this is the end, or is this the beginning of negotiations?
We have not spoken with the lobbyists. However, we understand it's the beginning of negotiations. Of greater concern is that they're proposing to take away the formula aspect of the funding and making it competitive in nature. Not that we wouldn't be competitive, but nevertheless, the guarantee of the dollars would be removed from the actual act.
And I'll get to you, Mr. Reyes. I'm sure you have some questions as well. Now, I understand certainty is a good thing. However, I would think that we have capabilities that other cities don't have, and that we would be we might benefit in the sense if we could apply and get more. I mean, is there a way that we could, because of our experience in doing what we do, that we might wind up in a competitive process, that we may wind up being in better shape?
I wouldn't think so, only because there are a number of community action agencies that are the recipients of these funds. There are some 50 in the state of California alone. So they're all going to be lobbying for their share of the pie. So I think it would be very doubtful that we would benefit in the long run from the reduction of funds, even by being competitive successfully. So no, I don't think so.
But this is still early in so we don't know if they'll just reduce the amount and then keep some formula.
Correct.
I have no clue at this juncture as to what they're going to do, but I think that we should realistically have fallback plans, and I'd like to see what the budget would look like at a 25% reduction. How would that affect our centers here? And I think as we move through this process, I just can't envision it being 50%.
Right. That's-
I realistically could see it could be around 25%. And that's just from my olden days when I was in Sacramento and discussions that I would have with folk. Could we survive at a 25% reduction?
We would have to reduce the number of centers that we fund. We fund the centers at $1 million per, and the decision to do that was based on what we felt was adequate sources of funds or adequate amount of funds to really support a center operations. And if we start cutting back on them to 900, 800, I think we're really impacting the original intent or design of the program. I feel that we would actually ultimately reduce the number of centers or propose to do that.
Okay, we've just been joined by Councilmember Richard Alarcon, so we do have a quorum, Mr. City Attorney. So do we have any idea as to when we will get a true feel as to what this reduction would be? Around what time frame do you think that would occur?
My understanding is that the recommendations or proposals would be coming out in March, so we'll know in the spring the potential impact.
So, backup plans, you guys are already formulating backup plans, different scenarios, what you would do based on various reduction levels?
And actually, we've just started doing that with the proposed 8% cut in the CDBG dollars that go to the family source system. So we've already begun that exercise. And again, it would really impact us beginning December 31st of this year. So there is a sense of urgency to come up with some calculations.
I get that, and what I would ask you to do is to make sure that you stay in contact with this committee and that you should update us on these items. And as soon as you hear anything, you know, we should know so that we can do the various things that we can do. If there is ever a time when communication is going to be critical, it's probably the next few months.
We will do that.
Mr. Reyes?
Mr. Chair, working with the National League of Cities, we did get a notification from the Executive Director, Don Borat, that this weekend there's going to be an opinion op-ed in, I believe, the New York Times, and they're going to be speaking to the budget cuts that the President is proposing. Part of that discussion is how cities begin to move on their Congress members who sit in key committees in dealing with the budget. I think one of the challenges we have is how do we at one time speak to what the cuts really mean to the constituents of the Congress members, at the same time speak to what the chairman is referring to as having our backup plans so that the nonprofits excuse me, who are going to be hit are given enough time to deal with the adjustments of their goals and their staff. So what I'd like to ask, Mr. Chair, a report back on, not a detailed impact statement, but give us some ballpark figures as to levels of impact in the various areas of concern that speak to housing, senior services, childcare. I think we need to quantify, being the second biggest city in this country, to speak to the levels of impact that is being proposed. But just as significant is the economic multiplier effect that will have in our economy. At a time when the President is speaking about jobs, the ability for a person to keep a job or even look for a job or have a job, for many, at least in my district, if you don't have child care, if you don't have senior services, that person can't leave home and can't work. And so the imposition on the welfare rolls increases, and dependency on federal government increases. So it's a contradictory posture, I believe. But we need to prove that. We need to demonstrate that. If I could have something like that in the very near future, I believe we're going to be having a conference call between the National League of Cities and other entities and working with the representatives in Washington. The other arm that I think we need to bring to the table, Mr. Chair, is that based on the charter, the mayor's office has technically the lobbying personnel in D.C. We should have them report to us as to what they are doing in D.C., who are they speaking to, what is our lobbying arm going to propose, are there any strategies that they have since they're walking the hallways in Washington, D.C.? Are there any type of key members that we should be speaking to? Maybe we need to appear before their committees. This is one of those moments that if we don't speak to the benefits and the multiplier effect, I think we can lose that window. Everybody's talking about cut, but we're not talking about the impact. Just economically, what does that mean for our bottom line? So those are the areas that of hope. I mean, I'd like to get some feedback from you, but what are your impressions?
Well, before you start, I think that's excellent. So, Andrew, what we need to do is have you guys come back, answer some of the questions that I asked and Mr. Reyes, and then we do need to look at a way to get some kind of report or have some dialogue through the mayor's office where it relates to the lobbying effort back in Washington. Now, please answer.
Just two things to point out. Number one, the system has been in place for about a year and a half now, and we've seen 48,000 city residents walk through our doors. So there's obviously a need for the services. And secondly, we're tracking the increased income that these folks are experiencing through access to the earned income tax credit, through opening a bank account. So we know the dollars that are going into the pockets of these folks that we're serving, so we can actually calculate the dollar impact. And additionally, with ARA, we did receive $12.7 million in CSBG funds, which we fully expended, every last dime of it. And a high percentage of those dollars went directly into the pockets of city residents because it was via subsidized employment. So without a doubt, there is impact if we lose these funds.
Then how quickly can this be done? How soon can we get at least a sketch of ballpark figures of impacts?
We have data. We could prepare it really quickly. I mean, within a week's time, we can have the information packaged.
Then perhaps in a week we can have that.
It would be a good idea. Maybe we have you come back at least within a week, no later than 2 weeks, and give us an update on that. Richard, you want to get engaged? Okay. Seeing it, no questions or no cards, then on item 5, without objection, we'll adopt the CAO report on that item. We'll keep our fingers crossed, and we'll go and we'll do the very best that we can. Mr. Alarcon, before you got here, we acted on items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. We've done that as a communique from the chair. Now that you're here, we do have a quorum. If you don't have any problems, we'll change that from a communique from the chair to a recommendation of this committee.
And we have a profound question on the table, too.
Oh, yeah, and we do have a question. Well, first, we will move these items, will be deemed recommended by the chair.
Except item 1, which is received and filed.
Except item 1. But the question is, should the Lakers trade Andrew Bynum for Carmelo Anthony? You know, we're on the cutting edge in this committee. Everybody's weighed in.
Knee-jerk reaction was absolutely, but I like to think of it.
My knee-jerk reaction was absolutely. And then I kind of slowed down and thought about it. So it is the opinion of this committee that the Lakers keep Andrew Bynum. Sharon, please forward that information to Dr. Jerry Buss and Mitch Kupchak, and tell them it was unanimous, Reyes, Alarcon, and Wesson. Is there any more business before this committee?
No, sir.
Then this committee is adjourned.